What's going on, YouTube? I am Germ here. Today we're going to be going over this article from PC Gamer, an exclusive interview with Valve's Counter-Strike dev team on the past, present, and future of Counter-Strike 2. This article has been really all the rage of the CS community recently. Obviously, Valve is this big, huge, massive company that I think for the most part throughout the life of Counter-Strike has done a very, very amazing job, but they haven't always been as communicative as maybe the community would like. And after this huge CS2 release, especially since it's been overall pretty underwhelming and not really what anyone expected. Now, hey, we can look back to everyone's expectations back in like April and say that maybe it was going to be near impossible for CS2 to live up to all the expectations of the community and the investor market and all this stuff. But obviously it has been a huge, huge, huge underperformance, and maybe it's gone worse than anyone could have expected. So I think Valve coming out and actually giving this exclusive interview and being open, honest, and communicating with the community at this time is actually very, very important. And it's also a great sign. And I think if you're an investor, this should give you a lot of confidence. Obviously, we haven't gone over exactly what they've said yet, but just the fact that they're even going out there and being able to, be public facing at such a crazy time when the markets are getting hit hard, people have a lot of trash to talk about the game, and the player base is even dropping a little bit, I think is a cool sign to see. So let's see what's going on in this article that everyone has been talking about. So September 27th saw the full release of CS2, the latest iteration of and the first direct sequel to the best and most influential competitive FPS ever. Counter-Strike's subsequent journey is an article unto itself, but the last and most significant stop before CS2 was Global Offensive, released in 2013, peaking towards the end of its life at an incredible 1.8 million daily players, which is obviously very, very insane. That's part of how we are even where we are today. That's part of how the markets got so crazy. It's part of the huge expectations that got put into CS2, just how awesome, amazing, and successful Global Offensive was, obviously. So they start off this interview by saying, over CSGO's lifespan, it changed enormously, and Valve clearly learned a ton that went into CS2. It proved to be a much more dynamic game over its lifespan than previous iterations of CS. Without losing focus on that core competitive mode, did this occur organically, or was it always conceived as a 10-year project? And they say, well, hey, CSGO certainly wasn't released with a specific timeline in mind. We wouldn't have predicted how massive the audience would become over 10 years, but the plan from the start was a long-term commitment to the game's development, and the decision to move to CS2 came out of that same broader commitment to Counter-Strike. So again, as a player, as an investor, this is a great thing to hear. They are committed for the long run. I don't think this comes as a shock because, again, they were overall pretty active and pretty proactive, I guess is the word, during Global Offensive. Yes, there was times when updates or changes didn't come, for months at a time and blah, 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 blah. But overall, they were one of the more active developers in keeping the game alive, fun, and good for a 10-plus year time span. And obviously, it's no surprise they want to keep doing that same thing in CS2. But that's also great to hear. Again, they're not looking at the short term. I know a lot of us are caught up in the short term right now for CS2, saying like, oh, the game sucks and the market's down and this sucks and that sucks, blah, blah, blah. But they obviously want it to be good right now, but they're also focused on this thing being a 10-plus year franchise and game, just like Global Offensive was. So the fact that they're committed to this once again should be reassuring for the market, reassuring for investors. That should be a good thing to hear, should give us confidence. But again, that really shouldn't be a shock either. As the rest of Valve transitioned to developing to the Source 2 engine, it became apparent that the best way to continuing supporting CS was to do the hard work of rewriting the game on the new engine. It's easy to think about a new engine in terms of graphics, gameplay, and all the tangible differences, but to be honest, the biggest upgrade is the fact that we'll be able to continue supporting CS for many years to come. So again, even though going to CS2 has brought apart some issues, and that's going to be some short-term turmoil, and we've seen the markets go down and the player base go down and all this stuff, again, they might be doing the move for more longer-term success, which is what is important at the end of the day. And it also, that might show that, hey, right now might be a great buying opportunity while they're going through some short-term turmoil, because you have faith or you have confidence that they're going to get there at the end of the day, just like they always did with Global Offensive. The number 2 is a big statement of intent, establishing CS2 as the first direct sequel to Counter-Strike's 23-year history. Why make this? CS2 is truly the largest technical leap forward in CS. The game is built on an entirely new engine. Even the way players find matches has gotten an update, so about half their time is now in Premier mode. So much change at CSGO that we couldn't consider it to be the same game anymore. It's not. This isn't a spinoff. This is the next iteration of mainline Counter-Strike. Kind of interesting. Since CS2 release, we've seen some players sharing clips of encounters where hits aren't registering as expected. What do you make of clips like this? And again, this is a very, very important thing because obviously a ton of investors don't really play the game. So maybe what the hit reg or whatever doesn't really affect investors too much. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these investments are built on the grounds of Counter-Strike being a functional game, a great game, a game that people love, a game that people are addicted to in a game that's going to have a growing player base over time. So even if you don't play the game and you're not directly affected by, the buggy servers or the terrible hit registration or the ping or the sub tick or whatever, if the game isn't good, there's no market. There's no world where the game sucks and the player base is dying and the market goes up. That's just not going to be a thing. So even if you're just an investor, you still want the game to be good. You still want them to fix all these issues. So they say here, to be clear, those examples aren't issues with sub-tick servers. They show a different bug, an animation hitbox mismatch when looking down. But the important thing is that those clips helped us isolate the specific bug and ship the fix to customers quickly, which they're not really answering the full question here, because they're talking about when the guy was planting the bomb and putting his head down and the hitbox was a little bit misaligned. But I think part of the question here is like people getting hit behind walls and the game looking a little bit buggy and laggy, which I don't know. They don't really seem to be acknowledging or addressing there. But whatever. They say they're going to fix it. They say they have fixed it. Who knows? Bugs like that are unfortunate, but detailed community feedback is incredibly helpful. So whatever. Hopefully they get there. Then, interesting part here, what are the plans for CS2's first year? One of the most exciting elements of a new release is seeing finally how players approach the game. They fundamentally change our view of what to prioritize and how the future might look. Premier Matchmaking is now the most popular mode in CS. It's like one of the only modes. So we're keeping our first year plans flexible as we balance our ability to respond to urgent player needs with a long list of other features we'd love to ship. So pretty much a non-answer there. Doesn't really talk about operations or cases or skins or anything like that. Nothing too cool. There's been a significant backlash to NFTs in the game community, and of course, games that feature NFTs and crypto aren't allowed on Steam. One of the promises of NFTs is the notion of being able to take valuable in-game items from one game to the next. CS2 is perhaps the first game to actually achieve this. What do you make of CS2 validating the concept of players retaining inventories across different games? I don't know why they made this a weird question about NFTs, but whatever. From the start of development, we knew that CS2 would ultimately replace CSGO, and we wanted to ensure that players could keep as many of their CSGO skills and items as possible. So early in the process, we started the work to support all of the CSGO items. Again, if they would have just wiped out everybody's CSGO inventories into CS2, that would have been an absolute disaster, and they would have got so much hate. So that was something they really were kind of forced into, I do believe. But still, there were non-trivial changes in getting older items to fit into the look and feel of the new game, but the feature was something we knew would be very important to players. Bringing the items forward is just a customer-centered way to bridge the game and its successor. Sometimes people talk about NFTs in the context of Counter-Strike items, but to be honest, we don't know enough about NFTs to weigh in. We just try to make the best decision for our game, which again, don't know why he made it a weird NFT question, but kind of cool to hear them talk about that a little bit. Has the launch been a success? Which I think is a very, very good question. The launch has been an overwhelming success. The player numbers are still humbling. CS2 site shows the game has 31.5 million monthly players. Believe it or not, one of the big successes was the limited test, which I thought the limited test was good. It's just once a game actually had the full release, we expected a little bit more of that. The limited test, you're willing to be okay with some of the bugs and glitches and everything, but once a game comes out, you wanted some new content at the very least, even if the game wasn't going to be perfect. Getting the game into players' hands quickly and early gave us hugely valuable feedback that drove many of our decisions leading up to the release. So we were very happy with the process that led us from early development to the limited test to the release. As to what we would have done differently, we could have handled our communication over the system requirements for CS2 better, which is kind of funny. We know there's a conversation about whether the limited test should have been longer. For sure, there are some features that would have been included in CS2 at launch if we had a longer beta, but over time, it's not clear what the priority should be when you have an ever-shrinking and self-selecting subset of the community participating, which is true. The longer the game was in the limited test, the more people were just going to go play CSGO until the full CS2 release came out. So by forcing people onto CS2, they're forcing them into playing, maybe a not perfect game, but then they're getting a ton of feedback about what's actually wrong with the game so they can fix it. So again, even though that is a lot of short-term turmoil and short-term disaster for the game and the players in the market, you're kind of using your whole player base as playtesters for an unfinished game, which feels kind of bad. But still, if this gets us to a fully finished, really, really great product 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now, then that's still going to be a big win overall. But it is risky. But, Valve is making on the fact that people love Counter-Strike and people are going to play Counter-Strike no matter what, which is probably accurate. So since we've launched, we've been getting real feedback about new bugs, behaviors, and issues from players at every level, from casual to the pros, people on older hardware, all that stuff. Launching the game has massively accelerated the pace of improving CS2. Again, we've been getting updates so often. I think we had one update every other day so far throughout the month of October, which has been crazy. You've very slightly reduced the spray of every rifle in the game. Why? Players were split between 64 and 128 tick servers. Tick rate affected CSGO in several ways. Goal of CS2 is to unify the two groups. Spray patterns look slightly reduced compared to 64 tick CSGO because as a general rule, we tried to match the 128 tick behavior when possible, and 128 tick rate CSGO sprays are roughly the size you currently see in CS2. Do you intend to introduce new weapons over CS2's lifespan? And they say yes. That could be very, very interesting and crazy for the markets. CS2's release has thus far focused on the competitive side of the game. A lot of people loved about the previous games hasn't even appeared yet. Stuff like arms race, particular community maps. What are they planning there? They say these modes haven't been forgotten. We have plans to reintroduce popular game modes and explore others. So that'll be very, very cool. I don't know if there's anything else I want to hit on here. They talk about maps and stuff a little bit, which I think is interesting. How is the community market for items reacted to the release of CS2? I think here, obviously, they talk a little bit about the market. They said here, we generally only look at market prices when we're thinking about shipping new stuff and want to understand players' preferences. Players' interest in items fluctuates over time for many reasons, so outside of that context, we try not to read too much into temporal changes. And as we were leading up to CS2, we were focused on other areas of the game, so while there may have been lots of interesting things going on in the market, we weren't paying attention, which obviously they had a whole game that they were trying to build and create and make functional. So there might be more stuff focused on the markets later on in the future. Who knows what even that means? But obviously, part of that is going to be new content, skins, cases, operations, all that good stuff, hopefully coming soon. And maybe even some kind of new content that we have never seen before, which is going to be very, very cool as well. Not really anything else here, I think, that was all that important. How different do you expect CS2 to look in 10 years? We should all expect CS2 to look very, very different in 10 years, which is something I think everyone in the markets needs to keep in mind because, again, right now we see guns and skins and stickers and the game and the gameplay and everything changing all the time. Again, it's even changing just from CSGO, but even CS2 is changing week to week to week and day to day to day. Like, again, CS2 is Counter-Strike 2. It's not CSGO 2. It's not CSGO. It's not an update to CSGO. It's a whole new game. Things are going to change. Things are going to look different. Look at CSGO 10 years ago to what CSGO ended up being. The same thing is going to happen, maybe even crazier, maybe even more extreme with CS2. Your guns, your investments, the game, the maps, everything is going to change over time. I know people don't like change. I know that's scary. It freaks people out, whatever. But change can be a good thing if you trust Valve, if you trust the development team, if you trust the people behind the scenes for CS2, then even if you don't, change is still going to happen. So it's something you're going to have to learn, adapt, and focus to. You know, investing strategies that worked in CSGO maybe won't work in CS2. You'll maybe have to create some new strategies. You maybe have to use some old strategies that didn't work, and now they're going to work. Who knows? But be open to change because things are going to look very, very different over time. Valve is going to be active in changing things, and I think that's a good thing because, again, right now, people don't love where CS2 is, but the fact that they're going to be so engaging and committed, and they already have been so engaging and committed, I think is a great sign for the long term, and as an investor, it makes me very, very confident. Just as CSGO's final form was a culmination of a decade of experiments, CS2's future isn't set in stone. We don't have a specific vision that we're trying to realize, but rather a process we want to continue to execute for many years. We'll continue to explore all the opportunities that come with the game and its amazing community to experiment with new ideas and do the hard work necessary to make CS2 the place every FPS fan wants to be. So, Valve is getting out there. They're committed. They're behind the scenes working really, really hard to change and update the game. They're also now communicating with the community. They are committed for the long term. Again, I do believe that people love Counter-Strike. That Counter-Strike is a great game, a great format. CS2 is not in the best form right now, but it's going to get there, I do think. And when it gets there, and when new content comes out, and when the player base starts growing and it gets more popular and people are talking about it and there's all this good publicity and press and everything isn't so negative, it's going to bring old players back. It's going to bring new players in. The market's going to grow. I do think it'll be good for the game. The market's everything. Right now is a time of, like I said, turmoil, panic, despair, depression, all this stuff. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And again, at the end of the day, you want to be buying low. You want to be selling high. This is a dip. It's hard to buy during the dips. It's hard to buy when it seems like everything sucks and everything's terrible and Counter-Strike's dying and dead and all this stuff. But articles like this coming from the devs, it shows that they care, shows that they're active, shows they're engaged. It shows they at least have their pulse on the community a little bit. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I did think this is a very, very interesting update and article. You guys should definitely check it out. It's all over Twitter, all over the internet, all that good stuff. But yeah, a lot of good, interesting things here. Definitely makes me feel more confident about the future and about these markets. Let's see what happens from here. I don't know. Hopefully I catch you guys in the next video. Until then, peace.